Welcome, young learners, to this inspiring story titled Heaven on Wheels, where we meet two extraordinary men courageously living with disabilities. Let's start with the broad picture. Here in figure, you see the renowned scientist Stephen Hawking in his wheelchair using a speech generating device. It's not just a photo, it's a testament to his perseverance and brilliance. Stephen Hawking was an astrophysicist, a scientist who studies stars and the universe. He had a disease causing paralysis, a loss of muscle control, confining him to his chair and making speech possible only through a computer. On the other side, we have Firdaus Kanga, a writer from Mumbai, born with brittle bones, who also moves around in a wheelchair. Firdaus tells us about his meeting with Stephen, a meeting filled with honest thoughts on life with disabilities. Notice the choice of words like machine-like voice. This is a metaphor, a figure of speech comparing two things. Here, the voice sounds mechanical and precise, just like a machine, which emphasizes the challenge yet resilience in communication. Now, pause for 20 seconds and think. Why do you think the writer introduces both men and their disabilities right away? How does this set the tone for the story? Wonderful insight. By introducing both men and their challenges up front, the writer prepares us to explore their extraordinary strength, not despite their disabilities, but often because of how they face them. It invites us to rethink the meaning of ability and courage in life. Let's move into the world of Cambridge, a beautiful city rich in history and intellect. The writer calls Cambridge a metaphor for England. That means Cambridge stands for more than just a place. It symbolizes the tradition, knowledge, and spirit of England itself. During a walking tour, the guide mentions Stephen Hawking as the worthy successor to Isaac Newton. This is an alliteration, where the repetition of consonant sounds, like the P in poor man and quite disabled, gives a rhythm that emphasizes both sympathy and respect. The word successor, pronounced successor, means one who follows another in a position or role. Here, Hawking follows Isaac Newton, one of the greatest scientists in history. He holds the chair, which means an important professorship, at Cambridge University. This connects two geniuses across centuries. Now pause for 25 seconds and consider. How does the metaphorical use of Cambridge deepen our understanding of the writer's experience? Also, how does the alliteration affect the tone of the description? Great thinking. By using the metaphor, the writer transforms Cambridge into more than geography. It becomes a symbol of legacy and discovery. The alliteration softens the mention of Hawking's disability, blending respect with empathy and preparing us to appreciate the man behind the fame. Now, let's focus on the powerful image shown in Figure 1, the photograph of Stephen Hawking. Look closely. Here is a man whose intellect knows no boundary, though his body faces severe challenges. He has amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or ALS, which causes paralysis and confines him to a wheelchair. Notice the wheelchair designed to support him and the communication device attached. This device translates the movements of his cheek or finger into computer-generated speech, allowing him to connect with the world despite his physical limitations. The image tells a story beyond words. It portrays resilience and triumph of the mind. When we combine this visual with the text from the previous slide, we see how Stephen Hawking's brilliance shines through adversity. Pause for 20 seconds and ask yourself, how does seeing this image affect your understanding of the struggles and successes of Stephen Hawking? Excellent reflections. The photograph grounds the abstract ideas in reality, reminding us that behind the genius is a human facing immense difficulties. This connection between image and text enriches our empathy and admiration. Imagine the excitement and nerves as Firdaus Kanga rushes to a phone booth after his walking tour. In extract, he describes almost tearing the cord to make the call. This moment brings us close to his vulnerability and determination. Notice the contrast here. Paralysis and physical weakness are set against the strong will to connect and write about his experiences. The phrase courage account is rich with sarcasm. It pokes fun at the idea that disabled people are expected to be endlessly brave, as if bravery is a bank balance from which they must withdraw. The writer shares a universal truth. Real strength often grows by seeing others like ourselves achieve greatness. This is an inspiring theme for all of us. Let's pause for 20 seconds. Think about this. How does the writer reveal his feelings about bravery and disability? What can we learn about societal expectations from this passage? Wonderful interpretations. The writer challenges the stereotype that disabled people must always be brave on demand, suggesting instead that genuine courage comes from within and is inspired by role models like Stephen Hawking. Here, we get a deeply moving glimpse into the meeting itself. Stephen Hawking's voice comes through the computer, which the writer calls disembodied, meaning separate from his body. He says, "I haven't been brave. I've had no choice." This challenges our ideas about courage. The writer's description is filled with vivid imagery. Notice the personification in mind buoyant with thoughts. The mind here is compared to something lively and floating, full of energy, despite the body's weakness. There is also a powerful metaphor, the sentences stiff as corpses, showing the difficulty in communicating, as if the words themselves are lifeless and heavy. The alliteration in frustrated exhaustion adds rhythm and emphasizes Hawking's physical struggle. Pause now for 20 seconds to reflect. How do these literary devices deepen your understanding of Hawking's human experience? Excellent. The rich language invites us to look beyond the physical to the vibrant intellect and emotions living inside. It teaches us empathy and respect for the complexity behind every person's story. Despite the serious subject, humor often becomes a powerful tool. In extract, the writer asks if Hawking laughs inside, to which Hawking replies that he finds it amusing when people patronize him. To patronize means treating someone as if they are less capable, but his laughter shows dignity and a refusal to be diminished. The writer also asks if he finds interruptions annoying, to which Hawking replies simply, yes. This frankness reveals an honest human moment. Even heroes get annoyed. The phrase one-way smile gives us an imagery of a unique, perhaps knowing and gentle smile. The author calls Hawking one of the most beautiful men in the world, not for looks, but for his spirit. Pause and think for 20 seconds. How does humor in this conversation affect the mood? Why is Hawking's smile described so poignantly? Wonderful observations. Humor softens the difficulty and invites connection. Hawking's smile is a symbol of resilience and warmth, reminding us that humanity shines through no matter the circumstance. This passage takes us deeper into the physical reality of disability, contrasted with the profound inner life of Stephen Hawking. The writer's imagery compares Hawking to a lantern whose walls are worn so thin you glimpse only the light inside. This is a metaphor vividly painting the idea of his body as fragile, housing a brilliant mind. The detailed description, twisted head, shrunken torso, wasted legs, makes the physical truth unavoidable. Yet the eyes which can speak remind us that spirit and thoughts remain alive and urgent. The writer, though not a believer in eternal souls, comes to recognize the essence that defines us all, the inner self, while the body is everything else an accessory. This is a philosophical reflection on what truly makes a person. Pause for 20 seconds. What emotions does this imagery evoke in you? How do you think the contrast helps us appreciate Stephen Hawking's humanity beyond his illness? Beautiful reflections. The power of poetry-like language helps us see beyond appearances. It teaches us that our true selves are light and spirit, shining through all trials. Here, the writer shares a candid exchange with Stephen Hawking. Hawking plainly says, "I don't think there is anything good about being disabled." This honest admission breaks away from idealized views. The writer responds by highlighting the kindness discovered in others, a silver lining in hardship. However, Hawking's voice synthesizer cannot convey inflection, the rise and fall of voice that expresses emotions, making communication even more challenging. This inability to express emotion verbally contrasts with the writer's vivid feeling of relief and exhilaration each time he moves even a little. It shows how value lies not only in grand achievements, but also in small joys and possibilities. Pause for 25 seconds. Reflect on these contrasting emotions. How does this passage expand your understanding of disability? Insightful thoughts. The passage encourages us to appreciate the complexities of life, where pain and kindness, limitation and joy coexist. It invites us to recognize strength in vulnerability. Now it's time to understand the narrator himself, Firdaus Kanga. Throughout, Kanga shares deep emotional honesty. He feels admiration for Hawking's genius, but also guilt because communicating with Hawking requires such effort. Notice how this mixture of feelings reflects real human vulnerability. Meeting Hawking becomes a pivotal moment, showing him what is possible despite physical challenges. This reveals an important idea. Role models inspire us, pushing boundaries of what we imagine possible, especially when we share similar struggles. Pause for 20 seconds and consider. How does Kanga's narrative voice make you feel closer to the story? Why are his honest emotions important to the overall message? Excellent reflections. The narrator's open feelings invite us to empathize and realize that courage includes moments of doubt and vulnerability, making ultimate achievements more moving. A profound theme runs through this story. Disability does not define the human spirit. Stephen Hawking's life and Firdaus Kanga's reflections challenge us to see ability in new ways. The story calls into question the so-called normal, encouraging us to recognize that physical challenges do not limit what one can think, feel, or achieve. It celebrates human individuality, determination, and brilliant minds shining through adversity. Pause for 30 seconds. Reflect on this theme. How can understanding this change the way we treat people with disabilities? What message do the two men send to society? Beautiful ideas. These lessons remind us to value inner qualities more than appearances and to embrace diversity in human experience. Literature often paints pictures with words using devices like metaphor and imagery. Remember the phrase, "Cambridge was my metaphor for England"? This means Cambridge stands for something larger, symbolizing tradition and intellect. The striking image of a lantern whose walls are worn so thin you glimpse only the light inside powerfully conveys the contrast between the fragile body and glowing mind of Stephen Hawking. This is both a metaphor and vivid imagery, appealing to our visual senses and emotions. Such language invites us deeper into the meaning of the text, making abstract ideas tangible and emotionally resonant. Pause for 20 seconds. Can you think of any metaphors around you in daily life or other books? How do they affect your reading experience? Well done. Recognizing these tools will help you appreciate and create your own rich literary expressions. Building your vocabulary is key to understanding and enjoying literature. Here are some important words from the story. Paralysis, loss of muscle control, a serious condition. Astrophysicist, a scientist exploring space and stars like Stephen Hawking. Metaphor, a way of comparing things without using like or as. For example, Cambridge as a metaphor for England. Personification, giving human traits to things that aren't human, such as the mind buoyant with thoughts. Incandescence, glowing with light, metaphorically used to describe inner brilliance or spirit. Try using these words in your own sentences. For example, you might say, "The sun's rays showed the incandescence of the morning sky." Pause for 15 seconds to think of one sentence using any of these words. Great job! Using new words helps you express ideas powerfully and understand texts more deeply. Let's test our understanding with some comprehension questions from the story's core themes. These questions help us pay attention to details and think critically. Question 1. Regarding Cambridge was my metaphor for England, which interpretation fits best? The correct answer is option 1, noting Cambridge as a renowned university symbolizing England's intellect. Question 2. Where did the writer make the phone call to Stephen Hawking? He made it from outside a phone booth by stretching the cord, a vivid detail showing his eagerness. Question 3. Why did the writer feel guilty? Because he was aware that communicating with Stephen Hawking required considerable effort from him using the voice synthesizer. Lastly, question 4 asks what possibilities of my body means. It refers to small but meaningful physical movements like shifting in the wheelchair, which felt like freedom. Pause for 30 seconds to answer these questions thoughtfully. Great job! Answering comprehension questions carefully builds sharper reading skills and deeper appreciation of literature. Stories like the one we explored inspire creative expression. Now imagine your own moments of strength or hope. Let's write a metaphor capturing this feeling. Think of something strong or hopeful in your life, maybe a person, a place, or an idea. Describe it using a metaphor, comparing it to something tangible. For example, you might say, "Her courage was a lighthouse, steady against stormy seas." Or, "Hope whispered softly, like the first light of dawn breaking through darkness." Notice how these give life to feelings through imagery and personification. Pause for 20 seconds to jot down your metaphor. Well done. Playing with language like this deepens your connection to literature and hones your creative skills. Finally, let's reflect deeply. This story invites us to embrace diversity and cultivate empathy. How we see others, especially those who appear different, shapes our world. Think about someone you know who faced challenges and showed strength. How has their story influenced how you view ability and courage? Remember, everyone has an inner light, an incandescence that shines beyond physical form. You may write your reflections or share them with someone. There is no right or wrong answer here, only your honest thoughts. Pause for 30 seconds to reflect quietly. Thank you for exploring this powerful story with me. May it inspire you to see the world with kindness, understanding, and hope.